When you picture the ultimate purveyor of childhood joy, you probably conjure up a very specific image, right? Like a cheerful, grandfatherly figure, optimistic,
Maybe
easygoing.
sketching a mouse while whistling a happy tune.
Exactly. You picture that famous Uncle Walt persona that was just beamed into millions of living rooms every single week.
I mean, he's the living embodiment of happily ever after. This is the guy who practically invented the modern concept of family entertainment.
But, then you open up the historical records and that perfectly curated image just entirely fractures.
Oh, completely.
Because in private, the man who built an entire global empire on optimism he was a painfully shy, fiercely insecure workaholic.
Yeah, he chain smoked, he suffered a severe nervous breakdown in his early 30s.
Right, and he openly admitted to his friends that he was essentially playing a character in public. He literally once stated, "I'm not Walt Disney. Walt Disney doesn't smoke. I smoke."
Which is wild. We are looking at a man whose public identity was a carefully constructed shield. It masked a reality that was endlessly complicated, incredibly stressful, and driven by this relentless, almost desperate need for control.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a stack of biographical sources and embarking on a story-driven journey through the life of Walt Disney.
And this isn't just a nostalgic look at classic animation.
No, definitely not. This is an exploration of massive, crushing failures, ruthless corporate battles, and some really deep controversies. Because if you have ever paid premium prices for a theme park ticket or watched a modern blockbuster, you are interacting with an ecosystem built entirely by one man's profoundly stubborn vision.
Yeah, to understand the architecture of modern media, you have to understand the psychology of the architect.
Exactly. And for you listening, this story is a masterclass in resilience. But more importantly, it shows how an obsession with perfecting the environment around him literally reshaped global culture.
It really did.
But to understand the workaholic who demanded absolute control, we have to look at the exhausted kid who had none. He was born in Chicago in 1901, but he experienced his really formative, genuinely happy years on a farm in Marceline, Missouri.
Which is actually where he started drawing.
Yeah. A retired neighborhood doctor paid him to draw his horse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Marceline became his psychological baseline for peace. It was his idyllic blueprint for small-town America, but it was entirely fleeting.
Right, because by 1911, financial pressures forced the family to Kansas City, where his father bought a newspaper delivery route.
And this is where the legendary, almost punishing work ethic is forged. I mean, Walt and his older brother Roy were waking up at 4:30 in the morning every single day to deliver papers in the freezing Midwest winters.
That sounds miserable.
It was. Then they went to school, then they did the evening route. He worked so relentlessly that he would physically collapse and fall asleep at his desk in class, and he endured that grind for 6 years.
You can trace almost every business decision he makes later in life back to this specific period. You have a child who learned incredibly early that survival meant relentless physical labor.
Yeah, exhaustion was just his normal state of being. He was actually so eager to escape that he forged the date on his birth certificate in 1918 to join the Red Cross as an ambulance driver in World War I.
And even over there, he was drawing cartoons all over the canvas of his ambulance.
Right. But when he returns and tries to turn this drawing obsession into an actual career, it is just a cascade of brutal failures.
Yeah, it's so easy to assume his path to success was a straight line, but it was anything but.
He gets laid off from his first commercial art job at Pesman Rubin. He and his friend Up Iwerks try to start their own company, Iwerks Disney. That fails.
Right.
He tries again, launching Laugh-O-Gram Studio. He hires a staff, creates a genuinely brilliant hybrid of live action and animation called Alice's Wonderland.
And still goes utterly bankrupt.
Completely. Bankrupt to the point where he was sleeping in his office on canvas cushions and eating cold beans out of a can because he literally couldn't afford a meal.
It's rough.
You see this pattern, and it feels like a 1920s equivalent of a relentless Silicon Valley tech founder. He's testing new animation techniques, burning through his capital, failing fast, and immediately launching the next prototype.
Yep, iterating constantly.
Exactly. So by age 21, he admits defeat in Kansas City and moves to Hollywood with a cardboard suitcase and essentially nothing else.
And we have to pause on those early failures because they form the foundation of his entire management philosophy later on.
How so?
Well, he failed multiple times while relying on local financiers and outside partners. That trauma created an absolute uncompromising demand for perfection and independence.
Ah, I see.
He realized early on that if his name was going to be on the product, He could never, ever again leave his fate in someone else's hands.
Which makes the next chapter of his life incredibly painful because he thought he had finally secured that independence, only to experience just the ultimate corporate betrayal.
Right, the rabbit.
Yes. He finally finds a formula that works in Hollywood with a character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It's a massive hit. The studio is hiring. They are finally making money. But in 1928, everything just falls apart.
Walt travels to New York to negotiate a higher budget from his distributor, Charles Mintz. But Mintz had laid a trap.
Oh, a brutal trap.
Yeah. Instead of a raise, Mintz tells Walt he is slashing the budget. And if Walt refuses the new terms, Mintz will just take the character and make the Oswald cartoons without him.
Okay, let's unpack this. Wait, so he didn't even own his first hit character. How does a creator not own the very character they designed and animated?
It really comes down to the ruthless structure of the 1920s studio system. At the time, animation studios operated like factory assembly lines, and the distributors held all the power.
So Walt just didn't have the leverage.
Exactly. Walt hadn't read the fine print of his contract closely enough. Universal Pictures actually held the intellectual property rights to Oswald, and Mintz, as the middleman, was leveraging that legal reality.
And Mintz didn't just take the intellectual property. He secretly went behind Walt's back and hired away almost his entire staff of animators.
Yep. The only key artist who refused to betray Walt was his old friend Ib Iwerks.
That is wild.
And that moment is arguably the most important turning point in the history of the entertainment business.
Really? The most important.
I'd argue yes. Losing Oswald forced Disney to internalize a permanent, non-negotiable rule. Never, ever let anyone else own your intellectual property.
Wow.
That single painful realization is the exact bedrock upon which the entire modern Walt Disney Company operates today. Total ownership of the IP.
So Walt declines Mintz's terrible deal. He loses his staff, he loses his star character, and he faces a multi-day train ride back to California knowing he has to start from absolute scratch.
Yeah, the creation of Mickey Mouse isn't some magical bolt of inspiration. It's a desperate, rushed prototype designed on a train to save a dying company.
It's survival mode. And Ib Iwerks immediately got to work refining the design to make this new mouse as efficient as possible to animate.
Exactly.
One detail from the sources I love is that Walt didn't even want to name him Mickey. He originally insisted on naming him Mortimer Mouse.
That just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Right. It was his wife Lillian who intervened. She told him Mortimer sounded entirely too pompous and suggested Mickey instead.
It was a crucial intervention. But while Ub gave Mickey his physical shape, the studio staff often noted that Walt gave Mickey his soul.
And his actual voice. Walt provided the voice for Mickey himself for years.
Oh, that's right.
But he knew a cute character wasn't enough to compete with the massive studio that just stole Oswald. He needed a technological moat. So, following the recent success of The Jazz Singer, Walt insists on synchronizing audio directly to the animation for Mickey's 1928 debut, Steamboat Willie.
Which was a massive gamble.
Huge, but it made the cartoon an immersive experience, not just a moving drawing. It was an absolute sensation.
Mickey Mouse essentially starts printing money for the studio. They start winning Academy Awards for their Silly Symphony shorts. But, as we established earlier, Walt's baseline is relentless forward momentum.
He could never just sit still.
No. He decides the short film format is just too limiting.
Right. He decides to risk the entire studio on this insane idea. A feature-length, full-color animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
To understand how shocking this was, you have to look at the industry context of the 1930s. Cartoons were considered like 5-minute novelties.
Right.
A palate cleanser before the actual movie.
Just filler, basically.
Exactly. The idea that audiences would sit through 80 minutes of a cartoon, let alone care about the characters, was considered absurd.
People in Hollywood literally called it Disney's folly.
Yeah.
Industry insiders confidently predicted it would bankrupt the company, and, I mean, they were almost right.
It was a close call.
Production dragged on for 4 years. The budget ballooned to $1.5 million, which was 3 times the original estimate. Walt is personally mortgaging his house and aggressively begging banks for loans.
What's fascinating here is how he used that money. It wasn't wasted. He was using it to push the medium toward replicating reality. He basically forced animation out of the novelty category and into high art.
How did he do that?
Well, he brought live animals into the studio for animators to study anatomy. He mandated fine art classes for his staff. And crucially, they engineered a piece of technology called the multiplane camera.
Wait, I always assumed early animation was just, drawing entirely flat scenes frame by frame. But looking at the sources on this camera, it looks like he basically invented a physical version of 3D rendering. They painted different elements like a tree in the foreground, a house in the middle, and the sky in the background on separate layers of glass.
Right. That is precisely how it worked. They spaced these glass plates at various distances from the lens, so when the camera pushed down through the glass layers, the objects in the foreground passed by faster than the objects in the background.
Oh, wow. Like real life.
Exactly. It created a genuine, staggering illusion of three-dimensional depth.
It's literally the 1930s equivalent of CGI.
It really is.
And the payoff was historic. Snow White premiered in 1937 and became the most successful motion picture of 1938. Walt even received a special honorary Oscar for it, one full-size statuette accompanied by 7 miniature ones.
He proved that drawn characters could evoke genuine human emotion.
But that golden age shatters almost immediately. They pour all the profits from Snow White into Pinocchio and Fantasia, releasing both in 1940, and they just flop at the box office.
Yeah, the timing was terrible.
Right, not because the films lacked quality, but because World War II breaks out and entirely cuts off their lucrative European distribution markets. By 1944, this cutting-edge studio is suddenly $4 million in debt.
And this extreme financial pressure destroys the culture of the studio. In 1941, to stave off bankruptcy, Walt implements heavy salary cuts. Combined with his notoriously paternalistic and high-handed management style, it triggers a bitter 5-week animator strike.
Okay, wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Walt is the one mortgaging his house. He's taking all the personal financial risk to build the studio, and they are $4 million in the hole due to a global war. Isn't it understandable that he felt incredibly betrayed when the artist demanded more money during a crisis?
That is exactly how Walt viewed it. From his perspective, he had built the utopian workplace, provided the funding, and shielded them from all the business risks. He saw their unionization as a profound personal betrayal.
But the animators saw it differently.
Obviously. From their perspective, they were highly skilled laborers working grueling hours for entirely unpredictable pay.
It's a staggering contradiction, though. You have the creator of the world's most joyful films walking past picket lines of his own artists. And to survive the debt, the studio pivots completely. They literally become contractors for the U.S. military, churning out WWII propaganda and highly technical training films.
It was survival.
We are talking about the studio that just made Snow White, now producing a cartoon called Der Fuhrer's Face, and instructional videos on flesh riveting.
And flesh riveting was vital for the war effort. It's the aerospace engineering technique of driving a rivet completely flat into the metal so the aircraft's skin remains aerodynamic.
I mean, I guess Disney's animators were uniquely skilled at creating clear visual instructions for those complex mechanical processes.
They absolutely were. But this era changed him. Because he had just lost control of his studio to a labor strike, Walt needed a new domain.
Right.
The strike deeply traumatized him, and he started pulling back from the daily management of animation. He needed an environment where the characters couldn't talk back, unionize, or picket. He needed total physical control.
And that psychological pivot births the concept of Disneyland.
Exactly. In 1950, Cinderella is a massive hit and finally pulls the studio out of its financial death spiral. But Walt is restless.
He takes his daughters to an amusement park in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And as he sits on a bench observing the dirty grounds and the unsavory ride operators, he envisions a meticulously clean, immersive environment where parents and children can actually play together.
Yeah, he was heavily inspired by the pristine nature of Tivoli Gardens in Denmark. But his own corporate shareholders rejected the idea outright.
They thought building a massive amusement park was a reckless, guaranteed financial disaster.
So he just bypasses them completely. He borrows against his own personal life insurance and sets up a private company called WED Enterprises.
It's essentially a corporate skunkworks program. He's using his own private funds to hire his best artists, who later become known as the Imagineers, to design the park in secret. But designing a park and physically pouring the concrete are two different things. He needs massive capital. And to get it, he invents a financial structure that changes the media industry forever.
It was brilliant. At a time when movie studios viewed television as an existential threat and refused to engage with it, Disney actively embraced it. He brokered a deal with the ABC television network.
The mechanics of this deal are just so smart. ABC agrees to provide the critical funding needed to build Disneyland. In exchange, Walt gives ABC a weekly anthology show, also called Disneyland, and a daily program, the Mickey Mouse Club.
He essentially trades broadcast programming for construction capital.
Yes. And then he uses that very programming as a weekly, hour-long commercial for a theme park that doesn't even exist yet.
He didn't just build a park, he built an ecosystem. He created a massive media flywheel. The television show funded and promoted the park.
Yeah.
The park drove merchandise sales. The merchandise promoted the movies. And the movies fed right back into the television show.
It was an entirely closed, self-sustaining loop of entertainment. And it worked flawlessly. He airs a mini-series about Davy Crockett on the television show, which accidentally ignites a massive national craze, selling 10 million records of the theme song.
10 million.
I know. And when Disneyland finally opens its gates in Anaheim in 1955, despite some early hiccups, it attracts 3.6 million guests in its first year alone.
But, as this massive corporate empire expanded, the distance between the warm Uncle Walt television persona and the private executive widened considerably.
Yeah, the private man was intensely shy. To decompress from the immense pressure, he built a giant, fully functioning miniature steam railroad in his backyard.
I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah, he named the locomotive the Lily Bell after his wife, and he would just ride it around his property to clear his head. As a boss, he almost never handed out direct praise. Animators knew that if Walt looked at a pitch and simply muttered, "That'll work," they had achieved a masterpiece.
Wow.
He preferred to reward success with financial bonuses rather than verbal compliments.
We also see a significant shift in his worldview during this era. Following the deep betrayal he felt during the 1941 strike, his politics really hardened. He shifted from being a Democrat to a staunch conservative Republican.
He even testified voluntarily before the House Un-American Activities Committee, asserting that union organizers at his studio were communist agitators.
He did?
The historical sources also mention FBI files on him, noting he was listed as a special agent in charge contact.
Yes, though it's important to clarify that when those files were declassified, they revealed that was largely an honorary title bestowed upon prominent, friendly citizens by J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Disney's actual correspondence with the FBI mostly consisted of consulting with them on educational films or getting approval for segments on the Mickey Mouse Club, rather than acting as a covert informant.
Okay, that makes sense. But I do find it genuinely difficult to untangle the contradictions in his legacy. Because if you research him today, you immediately run into severe, persistent allegations of anti-Semitism and racism.
Right.
It's hard to reconcile the man who pioneered family entertainment with these historical accusations. So what does this all mean for how we view him today? How do the sources actually handle this?
Well, it requires a careful, objective look at the historiography. Regarding the allegations of anti-Semitism, the primary incident historians point to is that Disney hosted Nazi propagandist Leni Riefenstahl for his studio tour in 1938.
Right.
Additionally, Art Babbitt, an animator who became a bitter enemy during the 1941 strike, claimed Walt attended pro-Nazi meetings.
But the sources also point out that Neil Gabler, the first biographer granted unrestricted access to the Disney corporate archives, concluded there was no evidence of anti-Semitism.
That's correct.
Gabler noted that Walt donated consistently to Jewish charities, employed many Jewish executives in senior leadership, and that prominent Jewish employees, like the legendary story artist Joe Grant, stated explicitly that they never experienced anti-Semitism from Walt.
The consensus among many historians is that while Walt himself did not hold anti-Semitic views, his later, very public alignment with hardline anti-communist political groups, some of which harbored anti-Semitic members, attached a stigma to his name that he could never fully shake.
And regarding the allegations of racism, it is an undeniable fact that some of his early productions, particularly Song of the South, contained deeply offensive racial caricatures that reflected the pervasive, systemic insensitivities of that era in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But again, his personal actions often stood in direct contrast to his corporate output.
Exactly. During the production of Song of the South, Walt formed a close personal friendship with the film's star, James Baskett. When Baskett's health severely declined, Walt stepped in to financially support him.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Furthermore, Walt personally campaigned the Academy to award Baskett an honorary Oscar, making him the very first black actor to receive that distinction.
The sources really show a fiercely polarized view of the man. Some critics view him as an architect of American cultural imperialism, exporting a sanitized, homogenized worldview. Others see a folk hero who championed relentless innovation and basic decency.
He was a man of his time, operating with the blind spots of his era. yet frequently defying the worst accusations leveled against him in his private relationships.
Which brings us to the final chapter of his life, where his ambition outgrew entertainment entirely. He stopped caring about movies. He even began to lose interest in the daily operations of Disneyland.
Right, because he wanted to apply his corporate flywheel to actual human society.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Following the massive success of his exhibits at the 1964 New York World's Fair, where he debuted audio animatronics, essentially syncing robotic pneumatic valves to magnetic audio tapes to create lifelike figures for rides like It's a Small World, he realizes he can engineer incredibly complex systems.
Yep.
So he secretly starts buying up tens of thousands of acres of swampland in Central Florida.
This is the inception of the Disney World project. But the theme park, the Magic Kingdom, was just the commercial bait to fund his true obsession. The core of the Florida project was EPCOT, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow.
And it wasn't supposed to be a theme park. It was designed to be an actual functioning city where tens of thousands of people would live and work.
Disney's ultimate realization was that entertainment wasn't enough. His ambition was total control over the human environment to create a perfect, clean, optimistic world.
Right.
He believed the same corporate efficiency and forced optimism that perfected the amusement park could be used to fix the messy, unpredictable reality of democratic urban planning. He envisioned a city with no slums, entirely underground traffic, and constant implementation of new American industrial technology.
But he never got to build it. A lifelong chain smoker, Walt Disney died of lung cancer in December 1966 at the age of 65. His older brother, Roy, the same brother who delivered newspapers with him at 4:30 in the morning all those years ago, postponed his own retirement to finish the Florida theme park, dedicating it to Walt.
But without Walt's dictatorial driving force, the company eventually abandoned the utopian city concept and turned EPCOT into the world's fair-style theme park we know today.
It's kind of tragic.
His entire life was an escalating quest for control. From the grueling paper route to losing his first character to dealing with labor strikes, he took the chaotic, unpredictable reality of life and spent his existence trying to engineer a cleaner, more reliable version of it.
It is staggering to step back and look at the scoop of it.
Yeah.
We are talking about a man who holds the all-time record for the most Academy Awards, 22 competitive Oscars.
22?
Yeah. He started as an exhausted kid falling asleep at a school desk, failed repeatedly, suffered deep betrayals, and ultimately built an empire through sheer force of will, technological risk-taking, and a deep understanding of human emotion.
He fundamentally altered the way humanity consumes stories.
Which leaves you with a really provocative question to think about. If Walt Disney had lived just a few years longer and successfully built the original EPCOT, a fully functioning, corporate-run utopian city where human beings actually lived under his strict design, how would that have changed the way we think about urban living and society today?
It's a great question.
Would applying theme park efficiency to human reality have created a genuine paradise or an absolute corporate dystopia? Keep questioning the narratives, look past the pristine public personas, and keep exploring the real, complicated mechanisms behind the things you think you know. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.